Welcome again to the complete free Flutter course presented by yours truly, Ovidius Mazurum. In this video, the fifth lesson of Module 3, we're going to go over the solution for the layouts exercise. So if you guys remember from last time, we were challenged to make the Thai flag and, as a harder challenge, make the Norwegian flag in Flutter. And as you can see, I have the flag loaded with these numbers so we can see the correct proportion. I didn't feel the need to do that for the Thai flag because it seems much simpler. So let us jump in. You can see that for the starting project, it's pretty much the same as it was in the last time. I just have material imported at the beginning. Then I have my main function, which only has run app, my app. My app then extends a stateless widget, and in my build function I just have a material app whose home is a safe area, whose child should have been a scaffold. I thought it was a scaffold, but apparently I made a mistake, but that's fine. And then I'm going to give this a body of, and we'll start with the Thai flag, like that. It's giving me an error because it doesn't exist yet. So the same as last time, I'm just going to right click on lib and have here Thai flag.dart. One thing I do want to point out is the naming conventions. So when I have a class, the correct naming convention for Flutter is to use camel case with capitals, capital T and capital F. We don't use underscores anywhere. However, for the file names, and same for the project names, we do use underscores. So here I have lowercase t, lowercase f with an underscore in between them, and dot at the end, of course, for the file extension. Gonna hit enter on that. IMPM to get my import, then STL to get my stateless widget, and I'm gonna call this Thai flag. And you can also see that I put my emulator to be landscape. It's not necessary. You can also make the flag kind of inverted. That's fine. The important part is that you're just getting the practice doing the layout. It's not about making it look exactly like the actual flag. Okay, so now we have a container here, and I just have to import this. So now that I have the file created with the class defined Thai flag, I can import this into main.dart by control clicking, and I could import either one. They are the same location. So I'm just going to import this one because I prefer relative imports. I think most of us do. Hit Control S. And now we're not going to touch the main.dart file until we get to the Norwegian flag. So we're back into Thai flag, and we have our container. And I'm quickly gonna make another stateless widget, build box, because I can't think of a better name. And what I'm gonna do here is, rather than just having a container, I'm going to make an expanded, and I'm going to give it a flex of flex, which is going to give me an error, of course. And a child will be a container, and the container will have a color of colors.color, and that's fine. This also doesn't exist yet because I'm going to pass them in. I'm going to have a final int flex because flex is an int which represents what proportion of the total container size is going to take. And then I'm going to give it a final color of color. Then I'm going to control click, create constructor for final fields. So that's going to give me this. In fact, I'm going to change it. I'm going to get rid of the curly braces and get rid of the key, which means I also need to get rid of the key here. So what I've done is I've turned this constructor into a positional function rather than using named parameters. So that's just a tiny bit less code for myself. And if you're curious why we're using color this time rather than material color, I realized while trying the exercise that for some reason colors.white is not a material color, whereas all the others are. So for us to use the white color, apparently I need to use just color rather than material color. So going back into our tyFlag class, I'm going to change the container into, so if you have a look here, of course it has to be a column. And one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, you can do this a few different ways. I think for the tyFlag, we have less options because there's just less to it. But to me, it just looks like a column with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. We could also think of it as a column with 6 children. We could think of the blue as being two separate children, and that way we wouldn't need to give it a flex. We could just use the default flex 1 for all of them, and yeah, it could be a bit less code, but then we'd have to duplicate the middle child, which I wouldn't want to do. Now, as a quick aside, we could also do this with a stack with the red on the bottom layer, the white on top, and the white being smaller, and then the blue on top. But yeah, I think this is the easiest way of doing it. So we're going to do column here, and then we'll do children. And inside I'm going to do a build box and use a flex of 1, colors.red. Then build box, flex of 1, colors.white. Build box, flex of 2 for the blue, colors.blue. Build box, flex of 1, colors.white again. And build box, flex of 1, colors.red. Save it. And let's take a quick look. So currently the emulator shows nothing. Run it. And there we go. So this one was not too complicated. It was quite fast to actually code. We could say this blue is the wrong shade. We could make it a blue 900. Actually looks more similar to the image we looked at, but it's not something I would worry about too much. It does look a bit better like this, that's true. Okay, so this is the tyFlag. This one is not too complicated. The Norwegian flag, on the other hand, is going to be quite a lot more complicated. So we're going to go back into our main.dart first and change this to Norway flag. Of course, it doesn't exist yet. Control click, new file, Norway underscore flag.dart, impm for my imports, stl, Norway flag. And if there are any grammar police people out there, I know it should be Norwegian flag, but I prefer saying Norway. Yeah, that's fine. Now I can import this, so go back here, control click, import Norway flag, and I can get rid of tyFlag because I'm not using it anymore. So it's gonna show up as a warning, not an error. But yes, we're back here. I can just copy the build box. In fact, I could even import the build box, but I don't really see the use in doing that. If you were creating a bigger project, it would have been correct to import it rather than just copy pasting. But I'm treating these as if they were two separate files. Okay, so now we're kind of set up, but let's have a look at what exactly we're doing. So this is going to be significantly more complicated. The reason being that we cannot, and for some reason I can't see the entire image. There we go. I think I was missing this banner's going over the bottom, but it doesn't matter. So we can't do it with a single column or a single row. We're going to run into problems either way. If we did have a row, this would be the first segment, which would have one child, the second child, and the third child. This would be a column. But then we would need this to be the next child of the parents row And then we're going to get into problems with this segment. So we would need this segment to be one, this segment to be another, and this segment to be a different component. Or we could do all of this as one component, this is another, and this is another. Personally, I feel that maybe it's easier to start this off as a column. I'm not sure if it's going to make a big difference, but that's the way I want to do it. So we're going to do it this way. This is going to be the first child. This is going to be the second child. And the third child is going to be identical to the first. Okay, so going back in here, I'm going to start with a row. And I'm just going to save it to make sure that, yeah, so showing a white screen the way it should. And the first thing I'm going to do actually is just give me my layout. So let's see. And that should have been a column actually. So I have 6 here, 4 here, and 6 here. So what I'm going to do, and we're going to have to nest a lot of things here. I'm going to have the children, and the first will be an expanded, expanded, expanded. The top and the bottom are going to be identical, but I don't want to make a function because I'm only doing it twice. Normally the rule is if you use the same code 3 times or more, you should be duplicating. But if it's just twice, I wouldn't really worry about it too much. But of course you could if you prefer, that's also fine. And then I'm going to give this a flex of, so it was 6. And we do need children all the time, so I'll start with an empty container. Flex will have a 4 here, with a child, empty container. And the bottom one will have a flex of 6 and a child of container. The expanded widget has the child as required. So if I did this, it would cause me problems. It does say here the parameter child is required, right? So I need to leave it like this. And just to test, I'm going to give this a color of colors.red. And I'll give this a color of colors.white. And the last one, colors.red again. Just see if I have the layout correct. Yeah, so it's a good start. Okay, so once I have that, what's next? So let's do this first segment here. So I'm going to need another expanded widget that has a flex of 6, then a flex of 4, then a flex of 12. Okay. So instead of using a container here, I'm going to need a row. And then row will take children. And now we can use the build box. So I'll have build box for the first one. And the first one will take a flex of 6 and colors.red. The second is gonna be this. So for the second one, I'm gonna need another row. And then I'm gonna build box 1, colors.white. And I forgot my children. Gonna copy paste this. And then we have build box with a flex of 2, colors.blue. Build box flex of 1, colors.white. That's fine. And finally, so not inside the row here, outside of the row we're going to have another build box with a flex of 12 and colors.red. That's what's going to create. So yeah, it's going to give me an error for now because I forgot to wrap this. So I also need to wrap my row here in an expanded and give my expanded a flex of the total here, which will be 4. And there we go. So the first segment is complete. So really quickly, why did I need to wrap the row here in unexpanded? Is because so the row is going to try to take the maximum amount of space it can, and that's going to confuse my other row. You can see that I have a row inside a row, and I'm trying to use the flex box for the other widgets. So I need to somehow constrain this row so it doesn't break everything else. And what I showed you last time was just using a container with a fixed width. That would have worked perfectly fine. What I'm doing instead in this exercise is I'm just using an expanded with a flex of 4. What that's doing is telling Flutter, hey Flutter, calculate exactly how much space I have for me, and then just use that. So I do need to wrap this row in an expanded, and that's going to fix it and give it a flex. So that'll be fine. Okay, once I have this, I'm actually gonna copy paste it and have class build top and bottom extend stateless widget. I know I said I was going to copy paste the other way, but I changed my mind. I really don't like duplicating code. And this takes a build context. And don't worry if you don't know what this is, we'll go over it in the future. I just have to change this comma to a semicolon. And now I can use build top and bottom here. And here. And bottom. And now we can see both the top and the bottom is done. It looks much cleaner doing it this way. That's why I ended up changing my mind. But the middle is still going to be a mess. One thing I would say is that if this was a real project and I pulled out the top and bottom, I personally would definitely pull out the middle as well, which might seem a bit strange because I'm only going to use the middle once, but it's just because of how this would look. In the end, I would want this to say, so I'm just going to create it here, build middle, extend stateless widget, and then build middle here. Then here I can use an override, widget, build, and this takes build context. And of course you could have control clicked this, it would have been faster. Return, and that's what I had so far. So the reason I ended up pulling out the middle anyway is just because now this looks super clean. When somebody comes in, if they first open this file, they're going to look at this top widget first, the Norway flag, and they're going to think, okay, what does this do? It builds the top and bottom, it builds the middle, and it builds the top and bottom again. So just from having a quick glance at this code, I already have a pretty good idea of what it does. On the other hand, if I saw this twice and this between it, it's much less clear what my code does. And I would invite you guys to start thinking about the clarity of your code. Make it as easy as possible for people to know exactly what your code is doing without them having to spend a long time on it. But okay, enough about that. Back to this. So the middle is actually going to give us a different type of problem than the sides did, because I don't want this square, middle square, to be super awkward. I don't want to do 1, 2, 1, and then all of this be blue. Like that's just weird. You could do it, don't get me wrong, but it seems to me to be a tiny bit wasteful. So what I'm going to do instead is make all of this as one segment. So since this has a flex of 6 and this has a flex of 1, I'm going to make this with a flex of 7. However, the build box I made only takes a color. It does not take a, what do I need here? any day a column. It doesn't take a column, so that means I cannot use my build box. So instead I'm going to here, container. So first I need a row. Yeah, so I need this segment will be the first. This segment, then this segment. So that's going to be a row. In this middle section, I'm going to give it a child of row. Row is going to have children here. And what I'm doing is building this segment, then all this blue block, and all of this. As you can see, I'm going to edit out what I was doing before. I did it wrong. So I'm just going to fix it up by making expanded with a flex of 7 and a child. For now I'm going to have an empty container. Expanded. Flex of 2 and an expanded flex of 13, and a child will be an empty container. Save, refresh. So this time I'm not getting any errors, but it does not look the way it should. I have 7 here, 2 here, 13 here. If we go back to the Norwegian flag, the 7 represents this first one, 6 plus 1. 2 is just the blue segment, and then 13 is 12 here plus 1 here. And remember, I'm only using this middle part here. So this is going to then be a column. This represents this segment here. And inside the column, I'm going to have my children. I'm going to use my build box with 1 and colors.white. Build box 2 colors.blue. Build box 1 colors.white. And check how this looks. I'm not sure why it's doubling up, because that should not be doing that. But let's just continue building it piece by piece first. In fact, let me fully restart it. Then here I'm going to make this into a column, and my column is going to have, I don't need this to be a column because this is just one big segment. So instead here I'm going to use a container whose color is colors.blue. And somehow part of my extra line, which wasn't supposed to be there, has magically disappeared. I'm not sure what was happening there. I think Flutter was just a bit confused for a second. But yeah, it's working now, so that's fine. And then this next segment will need to be the same as this first one. So I'm just going to copy paste it because I'm just starting from column. Because the flex is different, but the child is the same, Flutter will automatically resize it the correct way. And there we go. That is fine. We could make this blue a tiny bit darker, but I don't feel it's necessary. If you look quite carefully, you can see that there are some lines displaying here. It does this on Android. I'm not sure if it does this on iOS. This is an error in Flutter itself. It's to do with the anti-aliasing. Unfortunately, I don't know of a way to get rid of these extra lines right now. If anybody does know, please let me know, because I do want to correct this. But for now, we'll leave it at that. Just resizing it. And there we go. So this Norwegian flag took much longer than I thought. Something strange always happens When recording a video, because I'm having to explain what I do while doing it, I'm a tiny bit distracted and not fully focused on what I'm coding. So as a result, I do tend to make more errors. Before recording this video, I did write out all this code and it worked much smoother actually, but that happens. It's one of the reasons why I am recording, because I do want to get more used to doing it this way. But yeah, that's that. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been it for this video. As I mentioned before, there are multiple ways of doing all of these, especially for the Norwegian flag, which had quite a complicated layout. You could choose how to do it, if you want a column on top or a row on top, or different things like that, how many parts you want to pull out into their own widgets, or if you do want to have just one big block, that would have also been correct. We have options. So that was it for module 3, lesson 5. In the next lesson, we're going to continue learning about layouts with some of the other widgets, things like images and different things like that, which will actually allow us to create a real app. We're going to go to dribble.com and take a design off of there and actually turn it into something of our own. So I hope you guys look forward to that. In the meantime, myself, Ovidius, I'm out.